property, and of course, Meraki Property Solutions in the house to talk about all of that. But firstly, I want to say hello to this lady over here, and then we're going to introduce a brand new guest here in studio. Let me quickly just say hello to Carmen. Carmen, welcome.
Good afternoon, Marco. Good afternoon, listeners.
So sy's baie polite vandag because sy soos die baas, sy soos die baas vandag. Ek weet nie hoekom sy so baie formal is nie.
Yeah.
Normally I've got to just brace myself. But of course she's always in studio to talk about the world of property today. It's going to be very interesting to talk about the benefits of renting to students. And I know some of you may think, oh, ek weet nie of daai kop seer is nie, but we're going to find out about the benefits. And then you got to introduce our new friend here in studio because I've been told I must pronounce her name right or correctly. So I'll give you the opportunity, Carmen, to do that and introduce our guest correctly over there then. I think so.
Okay, so this is Dorianne Phillips. She is a professional property practitioner with Meraki Property Solutions. And she was a bit forbarig. She actually asked me, how does this whole thing work?
Okay.
But it made me think, Marco, maybe it's time that the listeners start getting to know the team as well.
Okay.
And not just me. So,
okay, I just want to clear up something. Did you invite her or did she invite herself?
She invited herself, yes, but
yeah.
it's
I put it
fine,
out
man.
there, but I got the invitation eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, you tell the story. I don't know. I want to just clear it up for us. How did Dorianne get involved here? How did she get into the studio for today?
Okay, so she did ask me.
Oh,
Oh, I sound like my children now.
Glory.
She asked me, can she come observe, and see how this whole thing works?
No.
So I thought, no, we're not about observing here. Once you're in the studio, you need to take part. Hey?
We're not about that. Not observing.
Yeah,
You're
okay.
either part of the family, you're in and you stay in.
Yeah,
Hashtag
okay.
just saying. But welcome. Good to have you. Good to
Thank you so much,
to
Marco.
find out more about the rest of the Meraki family. And I believe you are the professional property practitioner with Meraki. What does that entail?
So, should I answer that? Should
Yeah,
you
I'm
answer
asking
that?
you. I'm
Well,
asking you.
it entails assisting buyers, sellers, as well as landlords and tenants in finding their perfect or forever homes.
Okay.
My background has always been in rentals and recently in student accommodation. I've been dealing with student accommodation for the last 4 years. And I thought we could speak on that
Okay.
a bit today.
So you're the right person to talk to because today is all about the benefits of renting to students, right?
Yeah.
And I live in a place where I see a lot of student accommodation. That's where a lot of them are at. But now, what are we talking about? Are we talking about just somebody that's got a property and want to rent out to students, or do we talk in a larger sense then?
I think we need to speak about it in a broader sense because it's not just landlords wanting to let to students, but it's also there's such a demand for student accommodation, and there's such a I think when it comes to student accommodation, a lot of landlords are sort of unaware of the fact that student accommodation and private accommodation are two completely different things.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you want to market your property towards students, there's a lot that you need to take into consideration. If I can just briefly mention rentals, for example, students cannot necessarily afford the rental that a working class or working professional could. Landlords need to be more involved. They need to sort of know what it means to be accredited or vetted by institutions such as your universities and your TVET colleges. So let's stop for there now. If you have any questions,
Okay, so we
elaborate.
We started off by talking about the benefits of renting to students. So let's talk about that first and foremost, and then we get into the nitty-gritty of how all of that works.
A large benefit is that there is a huge demand for student accommodation. But when I say a huge demand, I refer to affordable
Yeah.
student accommodation, especially when it's not within the precinct, university precinct per se. Um, Students cannot necessarily afford a 8 to 9,000 rand
Yeah.
rental per month,
Yeah.
especially those who receive funding or bursaries
Yeah.
from NSFAS, for example, or you get private funders as well. So those are things that landlords who are serious about student accommodation need to take into consideration. But there's always a demand for student accommodation. There's a shortage, in fact.
Okay. And if you got a question in regards to if you've been thinking or contemplating renting to students, this is your chance to ask. If we have
Yes.
an opportunity to answer, we'll get to. And I want to bring Carmen in, and maybe you can also help with this. So let's talk about the common challenges landlords face when renting to students.
So when I speak, I'm going to speak on a private landlord scenario because
Mm-hmm.
that's where my experience comes from. Dorian's experience is probably a bit more on the student race side. But if you look at a private landlord, firstly, the landlord often thinks, if they're renting to students, they can rent out per room. And because students got low income, they would rather rent the property out as 3 separate rooms,
Yeah.
and the students get the low affordable rental, but the landlord would get more rental than they would if they rented the property out as a 3 bedroom house, for example. But what we find with that is if you've got students living in a place, especially more than 3 bedrooms, the landlord needs to have some sort of management in place there. They need to have like a housing mother or, some more structure
Mm.
on board to manage that kind of situation, especially if there's shared facilities like a shared kitchen or a shared living area or that kind of thing. And another thing is that private landlords also need to take into consideration if they're renting out to students, is that they can often have this idea that they've set up the property for student accommodation, but then the challenge is that they're not on a traveling route that is easily accessible to a tertiary institution. And that is one of the or two of the factors that landlords need to take into consideration that could be considered as challenges.
Okay. Dorian, you want to add to that?
If I could just, I agree with what Carmen is saying, and if I could just elaborate a bit more. Often landlords advertising to students do need to come at a lower rate, but they need to offer more, which is what Carmen was referring
Yeah.
to. So you need to be able to manage your property, have someone there making sure that the students are not causing chaos,
Yeah.
especially if it's in a residential area
Yeah.
that's not necessarily
Yeah.
geared towards student accommodation. You need to be offering transport, perhaps, as an addition. I have landlords, or I've dealt with landlords who also offered meals to students, because you need to sort of mirror what a student would be getting in res if they were staying in on-campus res.
Okay.
And the more you offer, the better quality tenant you'd have, and you'll also have a tenant who would sort of rent from you for their academic career,
Yeah.
throughout their academic career.
And that would make sense because if you take care of them and they take care of
They
you,
will
of
take care
course,
of you
yeah. And they're not
100%.
there for an extended period, are they now? Because they're students and they may be there for a lesser time. And you actually want to look at your own. It's an investment.
It's an investment.
Okay.
Another thing that landlords who are wanting to let the students need to consider, it's very important that the academic term is 10 months. And often landlords want to sign a lease for 12 months.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that they do face is that when the academic term ends, students just tend to up and leave, without taking into consideration that they signed a 12-month contract. So it's very important for landlords to understand the lease that they're signing with the tenants, and for the tenants as or students specifically to also understand this is the contract that I'm getting into, and I'm actually bound by the contract.
Okay. I think you're on a roll, and let's continue chatting to you, seeing that you are so immersed in students and what they're all about. So let's talk about the financial considerations should landlords keep in mind when renting to students. You touched on that, but Carmen and myself, we've been talking about different aspects of renting and all of that, but this, I think, is maybe not considered too much in terms of what should be in place. So, talk to us about that.
When letting to students, landlords need to consider the fact that if they are, or if they receive a bursary, the student, or sort of financial aid, they do not um, settle deposits. The student needs to come up with a deposit on their own. Bursaries and financial schemes will also only pay the rental for the academic term. Another important factor to consider is that NSFAS, for example, they've lowered the monthly budget in terms of accommodation. So students would need to top up that rental. So, for example, if they've capped their rentals at 4.5, I think it might be slightly less, and you are advertising at 7.5, the student is then obviously going to be held liable for that. And you need to consider the fact when vetting a tenant, because obviously they would have a guarantor in most instances, is that actually affordable? Are you going to have a tenant or a student in place that's going to be able to settle their rent for the first 3 to 4 months, but after that they won't be able to? Also, when considering students who do receive financial aid, it's very important to note that the funds do not come through immediately.
Sure.
So when they do their application, they will issue with a letter to say, I am a financial aid student, for example, or I do receive a bursary, or I have a sponsor, but the funds will only come through about 2-3 months later. So is that a risk that you are willing to take? And can you afford that as a landlord?
So you got to play a bit of the long game and
Yeah.
the patient game there,
Yes.
but knowing there is a guarantee.
There is a guarantee.
Okay, I get that. And I don't know if we've touched on the well-being and safety of student tenants. I don't know if you want to maybe still touch on that.
So what is currently happening, and according to the Department of Higher Education and Training, DET, they do have minimums and norms, which our listeners can look up, as well as NSFAS, who have now taken over the accreditation process. I'm not sure how far or by when that will exactly happen, but what generally happens is that the institutions go out, or the off-campus accommodation officers go out and go and vet these properties. So they go and look at things like security, they go and look at things like plumbing, health and safety, fire, fire safety, fire hazards. All of those sort of things are taken into consideration before a property is actually accredited and vetted by the institution.
What's the benefits of having that accreditation?
The benefits of having the accreditation is knowing that a student, or that students are referred to those specific properties. While at the end of the day, it is a student's choice where they would like to stay. But it's just knowing that it's backed by the institution. Although most institutions do not get involved in the actual tenancy agreement, it's between the student and the landlord. But you could go to an off-campus accommodation office and say, this is the problem that I have with this landlord. You vetted the property. Can you please kindly assist in whatever way? And in general, because of that relationship with these private landlords and service providers, they are generally able to solve matters without it going to a rental tribunal or having to involve legal services.
I think Dorianne is doing very, very well. Hey, Carmen, and there's no notes. It's just me asking her lots of questions and she's shooting off there, shooting from the hip. I like that. And I know there's a question that came through. I'm not sure if we're going to deal with any of the other issues in regards to property. We're concentrating today on student accommodation and especially the benefits of renting to students. Carmen, I don't know if you want to jump in at any point, if there's anything to add, or you're very happy with Dorian, the way she's answering questions here today.
I'm very happy with the way she's answering, Marco. Thank you. But just to sort of add on is that landlords always need to weigh up the pros and cons, whether it's student accommodation or anything else, and really get all this information and make informed decisions.
Yeah.
And and also she touched on that this is an investment, and with investments there's always risk involved.
Yeah.
And landlords also need to take that into consideration, that with investments you have to put in order to get your return, and there is a risk on timing with returns.
But I also think, in terms of when we spoke about the accreditation, we spoke about the good relationship between the students and the landlord, of course. If you think about it, the better you have a facility that people will talk about. They say, "Listen, I had a
100%.
fantastic time there."
Absolutely.
Students talk, and
Absolutely.
other people may have an eye on that property to say,
Mm.
"Well, if you out, I would like to be there," or somebody else would get in there as well. So let's quickly talk about, and this is for the both of you.
Yeah, let me also just add there, Marco, especially also if students are coming from another city.
Yeah,
Often their parents will come down with them
Okay.
and help them look for suitable accommodation
Yeah.
before they go back to their homes. So also for the parents to have that security that when they leave Cape Town or when they leave the city, that the kids are in good hands.
Yeah. I've learned quite a lot today,
Mm.
and it's really eye-opening in terms of just looking at student accommodation. Does Meraki help with contracts regarding student accommodation? I think that's an excellent question.
Absolutely.
Well, so one would answer there, Natalie. Absolutely. Let's quickly talk about tips in regards to student accommodation. It wasn't me, ladies and gentlemen. All I'm saying, ek sal nie sê wie dit is nie. But let's quickly talk about those tips to effectively manage student accommodation properties. And I'll leave that with Dorian. I think she's been doing well. You on a roll, so let's hear.
Yeah.
Well, to effectively manage your student accommodation, you need to be involved. As Carmen mentioned earlier, when it comes to vetting any tenant, whether it's a private tenant or a student, you need to make sure that it's the right fit for your property. Firstly, you need to ensure that you're offering value for money. When we spoke earlier, we said that it sort of needs to mirror what a student would get in res in staying in on campus accommodation. So it's generally a student can just come with the bedding, with their clothing, and
Yeah.
there you have a place to stay. But student accommodation is not just a bum in a bed. You need to be able to build a relationship with the student, to build a relationship with the parent, because if I can't get hold of my daughter, I'm going to contact the landlord,
Yeah.
and I'm going to be, what's happening? Can you check? Landlords need to be involved with the institutions itself. They have wellness programs, they have wellness offices,
Wow.
they have res life offices that can come out and do training to assist landlords in certain aspects. If you want to have a landlord, for example, who wants to have sports programs because they have a accommodation that could house 10 plus students, and they want to have sports programs or any of those, run those sort of initiatives. Most institutions are happy to collaborate with landlords
that makes a lot of sense. And just in terms of infrastructure, there are students that of course need to be connected to the web and all of those things. I think it would be prudent to have those type of things there, of course, and I think it becomes very attractive when you have these types of facilities for those students.
And that's why an accreditation is so important, or for any institution. And now NSFAS, who's going out and taking over the process, where they go and inspect the properties. It needs to have Wi-Fi, it needs to have security, it needs to have proper facilities for students to make use of. So before, you would have a landlord, for example, advertising a 3-bedroom house, but then there's 6 students living in the property, which is not conducive.
Yeah.
And I think we can all agree that if you have your accommodation, really does play a large role in your academic performance.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so that is what we are advocating for. That students are not just, like I said earlier, a bum in a bed, but you're actually being looked after, and you are in a space where you know that you're safe,
Yeah.
and that you can actually empower yourself in terms of your education.
And bearing in mind, of course, like you mentioned, they could be on race, of course, and so you obviously want to make it competitive that they would want to come to your
Certainly.
particular
100%.
dwelling. And I must commend you very well. You did well in your debut here on the world of property with Meraki Property Solutions. And there's one more thing we're going to get to, Carmen, because it's a big day this coming Saturday, by the way. And if people forgot about it, how dare they? They must know about this. And so we're taking the show on the road. Let's talk about that
Yes.
quickly.
Mark, I'm so excited. We've got 98 tickets booked
Wow.
on Quicket so far. So I'm really looking forward to meeting some of the listeners. Our first stop is on Saturday at Blessed Hope Full Gospel Church in Steenberg, right opposite the police station, my home. And not the police station, the
Oh,
church.
hey, hey,
Okay.
We didn't want to talk about that.
Yeah. So Saturday's topic is on legacy matters, and we talking about mastering estate planning. So we've got our favorite attorney on board that will be discussing things around deceased estates, how to move from death certificate to letter of executorship, how to deal with half share transfers, how to deal with transfers after separation and death. And then we've got Chantal Roberts of Trinity Financial Planning, and she will be discussing how we can plan for costs out of deceased estates, that we don't leave the burden on our families once we've deceased. She will be discussing some of the planning around that. And then besides the legal aspects, Marco, we also have some other support that will be present on Saturday, which I'm also excited about. So we've got Dreams Foundation that will be there. They offer emotional support and guidance to widows that have been that have lost their spouse. We've also got Blessed Hope as their own grief and grief support center as well. So there will be counselors on board as well on Saturday. So we actually offering a broad approach. Doors will open from 9:30. But we start from 10 till 12 on Saturday, and then there will be an opportunity for those attending to chat to the vendors, as well as book consultations for free will drafting as well.
Okay. And I know there's some questions coming through here. I think you can also come personally to speak to the team this coming Saturday. It is free, and you can book via quicket.co.za, and look for the World of Property. Is it the World of Property, right? With Meraki
Correct.
Property Solutions. It's for free. Book your ticket. And guess what? I'm going to be there also, because listen, I don't know if I had a choice in this whole matter. I don't know, but that's something I'll take up with Carmen. But I've not got to be there. But I'll gladly do it, because ek is mos deel van
Yes, the
Meraki.
World of Property show. You're part of it, Marco.
Yeah,
We-
this is,
Come on now.
but I'm gonna be there nonetheless. I won't be the whole time there, but I'll be there. Still gonna come to the sports show a little bit later, but I'll gladly come and join in this coming Saturday and come see you guys, check you out, and like I say, I'm part of Meraki, so I gotta be there. Hashtag just saying.
You need to get to the magenta top for Saturday, just saying.
I need to get one. So I'll just wait on my family to organize one for me. But Dorianne, it was great having you in studio. And then, as well as Carmen is part of the furniture here at CCFM. But with that, we're going to go to a break. And I still got your riddle. I'm going to find a riddle for you. Going to fiddle with the riddle just a little bit later. But Carmen, before we go, just in terms of contact details again, how do they contact you?
So my cell phone number, which is also on WhatsApp, is 079-495-7358. I repeat, 079 495-7358. And then if you want to search for Meraki, it's Meraki. That is Meraki. We on Google search, we on Facebook, Insta, and LinkedIn. So you can search us on any of those platforms.
Awesome. And then also, like I mentioned, if you want to get yourself a ticket, it is free for the Property Road Show. That's what we're going to do. We're taking the show on the road. And as you heard, we have fantastic people in studio with us. You can come meet Dorianne, you can meet Carmen, you can meet. Where's Eleanor, by the way? I have not
She
seen
didn't
her.
greet today.
Where did she?
I'm not sure where she today.
Not one message from Eleanor Stoffberg here on my WhatsApp. Just hashtag just saying, but you can come meet Eleanor there as well. But with that, I'm going to play out, or at least get into a break, and then I've got some music, and then I'm coming back with your fiddle with the riddle after all of this. But let's go to that break. I'll be back in a bit.
We're going to see the glory of God manifest in our city.